Okay. It would be really funny if, oh, abundant, standard, O2, very similar, slightly heavier gravity. Cool. Okay, so Fallout New America. Obviously it only takes place on one planet, because of course. Oh hey. The colander. Is this... This isn't... Okay. I think this... No, this isn't the... This is too new to be that super duper sciencey thing. Or the colony ship, I'm pretty sure. Oh, also, let's... Hey. So this is gonna be a long one. You got aliens? Maybe. Could be robots. Oh no, we got something. Oh yeah, we got spoopy aliens. Cool. They're like... Am I hearing something behind me? Oh, I gotta... Okay, sorry. I am gonna get super distracted here, I guess. Oh, wow. Okay, so Fallout New America, obviously it only takes place in one country. But, it would be procedurally generated, with... with, like, POIs. I'm thinking, potentially... Oh, wow. You're using up all my ammo, aren't you? You also can't fit through a doorway. Or are refusing to try. Cool. Cool beans. Cool beans. I think I've probably run into this situation before. Sorry. That was a diversion onto a long episode that did not need to happen at all. I bet I can't land. I can't. Oh my god. Come on, dude. You think I remember the way back? Oh, you know, I probably need to get some, like, drinks, so I'm sure these guys had some and they don't mind sharing. Yeah, what was I gonna say? So, like, you know, if the Commonwealth was the same situation, like, Vault 111 is always in the same place. Vault 111 is always in the same place, and Diamond City's always in the same place. But let's say the Green Tech Genetics building is in a different place, or Drumline Diner is in a different place. So maybe it's, you know, maybe Drumline is, you know, like on the south side of Boston instead of, you know, to the west, right? And that kind of a thing. So actually, where? There's got to be stairs down, right? Of course, we did already go through. Not sweet rolls. No, I need drinks. Okay, that works. Please tell me somebody has like a vending machine on this thing. But yeah, it would be procedurally generated, with procedurally placed POIs that are also procedurally generated. I mean, I guess, okay, sorry. The dungeons I would want to be procedurally generated, and I guess however you do that, if you have to procedurally generate the world, I guess that wouldn't be terrible. If it was just like, you know, basically like, hey, there's always going to be, you know, the top right corner of the map, or top east corner of the map is, or west corner, or whatever, you know, is always going to be a mountain range, a snowy mountain range, or, you know, a valley, or plains, you know, or a nuclear crater, or whatever. You know, whatever. But every time it goes through the generation process each time, just cause it's a little simpler that way. Am I lost on this ship? I am. Yes, I am. I was probably like... Okay, here we go. What was I gonna say? Because, I mean, that's like the basic gist of it, right? Okay, Ocean does not have anything, so that's cool. Yeah, sorry, what was I saying? Oh, vehicles. So you wouldn't need vehicles, and I don't think vehicles should be, like, a super crazy part of it. Oh, I think I have some corpses attached to my ship, possibly? Huh. I mean, I guess that could be wildlife as well. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to see, like... I mean, I would love to see, you know, more Oh my god. I would love to see more, thingamabobs. Cassowary Grazer? Oh. Peaceful, okay. Fun. At least they're big and very hard to miss. Yeah. But, yeah, so vehicles would be a thing that you don't absolutely need to mess with it, but there would be a whole customization system. I think probably the way I would do it is there would be a Red Rocket truck stop, and like I don't know exactly how the fuel would work, but like I wouldn't force you to do anything, but I would be like, hey, here is, and not like heavily encourage you necessarily, but like, you know, you're leaving the starting area. There's a Red Rocket truck stop that has, you know, that's free to use as a settlement. And of course I wouldn't like, you know, like Preston Garvey. Preston, wouldn't, like, there might be a Preston Garvey, but it's not like, the game's gonna sort of like, I wouldn't have the game, like sort of funnel you into, you know, going down this one path. I mean, I guess it's not bad necessarily, just like, you know, like settlement building would be a thing, but it wouldn't be like super necessary. It wouldn't be like if you wanted to do it, it might get you some resources. It might get you, put you in a better spot, but there could be some trade-off. By like, hey, if you take the time and resources to do this, then there's other things happening in the world, and you could be spending that time doing something else. And same thing for vehicles, where there's a tow truck at a Red Rocket gas station. There's a note, there's like an owner's manual that's like, hey, here's how you do this. And if you wanted, yeah, you could go take a tow truck, and there's like a almost completely, or like a couple of completely almost intact cars, you know, relatively close by. And if you wanted to, yeah, you could go and like figure out the whole like vehicle customization system, play around with it a little bit, have some vehicles to play around with if you really wanted to. But again, like, you know, it's like, you know, it needs like fusion cores or energy cells or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's not necessarily a thing. Like, it's gonna take resources, it's not free. And it's gonna be a thing that, like, yeah, you gotta be a little tactical about it. So, and I would want it to be a game that has a lot of the resource-intensive focus. I don't necessarily... I mean, there's a lot of things that, like, for better or worse, Fallout is, you know, supposed to be made to appeal to the masses, with Bethesda, and some of those things are not bad, right? I have an idea of what I would want, like, for a main story, but also I think it's, like, batshit insane, and I haven't seriously developed it because I'm not, you know, getting... Oh, God. Come on, guys. gotten more ammo. I do need to, like, actually stock up on resources at some point. But yeah. What else? I mean, there are things like weapons. I mentioned before that I fucking hate how Fallout 4, like the balance, the meta for the weapons. There's all of these receivers, you know, for the guns that don't matter because you don't care. You just want to get the advanced receiver. Why would you not? Right? Like, it is just the best to do. So, like, you know, I don't hate the idea of having perks that give you bonus damage. I don't necessarily hate components that change damage numbers around, but there needs to be some, like, realistic, meaningful trade-offs, and it can't just be weight. Because weight actually really doesn't matter that much. Like, it's an important stat to keep track of, but, you know, I'm not gonna, if my armor is weighing 50 pounds or 75 pounds, it doesn't actually matter that much. I mean, yeah, like, that's a difference of 25 pounds of junk, scrap materials, you know, I could be getting, but, like, it's really not gonna be that big of a deal at the end of the day. And I think, I mean, frankly, I think that all of the weapons and armor should be lighter. If it is supposed to be pounds, then, like, the idea of getting, like, a 10-pound pistol that's, like, a Browning high power or something, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. This never made any sense. Even if you're, like, counting, like, spare magazines and extra accessories or whatever, but, like, that's eh. So, yeah. And there's just better ways to do it. For instance, I mean, like, I don't know, like, ADS, like, hey, you get a 10% damage buff, but, trying to move with your weapon is, you know, there's like a 20% penalty or something, or like the weapon sway, maybe not weapon sway, but like being able to move left and right, your aim sensitivity goes down, or goes up the heavier the weapon is. So if you, I don't know, if you move 5 millimeters to the left, your character, you know, aims 5 millimeters to the left or whatever. But if you have a heavier weapon, then you put 5 millimeters of distance in real life, and that translates to like 3 millimeters in the game, you know, that kind of a thing. But yeah. Let's see. I mean, vehicles, I guess, is also larger. So sorry, so what I would want to do is, like, say I have a pistol that does 20 damage, and, like, maybe with perks, maybe with every perk that applies to it, you know, you get to, let's say, 40 damage. You know, like a 100% increase, right? But that's all of the perks. And, you know, like, you can, at most, double all of the numbers on your weapon, potentially. But, like, again, that is going to be with some ridiculous trade-off. Like, I mean, you can also make weight matter more. Like, hey, you can only carry 70 pounds of stuff, right? I mean, God forbid, like, oh, you can have a suppressor, but that suppressed gun is going to, like, you have a Tetris-style inventory, but they wouldn't do a Tetris-style inventory. It's not that kind of a game. And also, I think all of this stuff could potentially, very easily, potentially be relegated to, like, difficulty sliders, which was a thing that they did very well in this game, when that came out. Sorry. I'm just like, maybe I should move on to somewhere else. But I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to say about armor. You know what? Honestly, I do think this would be a really big step forward, and I think I mentioned it. Like, you know, having armor broken up into left arm, torso, left leg, right leg, helmet. Like, the way that the clothing and armor system works in Creation Engine, like, is that if you wanted, you could have it so, hey, I want to be able to equip a glove item, or I want to be able to equip, like, let's say there was literally a NCR Ranger pants, NCR Ranger vest, NCR Ranger shirt, NCR Ranger glove, coat, helmet, you know, mask, helmet, you know, type, all that stuff. You could do that. That is boots. You could do that. But from a development standpoint, if I made 50 boots, 50 pants, 50 shirts, I have to make sure that each of those clothing items, like, works with each other and doesn't clip through, it doesn't look bad, there's no, like, just also general other bugs of, like, oh, hey, for some reason, when you equip this item and this item, the game freaks out and thinks you have, like, some crazy stats or something, and you have to make sure that every combination works and everything. Which basically is to say that the more complex your clothing system is, the more QA you have to dedicate to it. And that's probably the biggest, like, detractor from ever doing something like that. I think, I don't know, I would love to see it where it's, like, literally, hey, I mean, you know, maybe sometimes, yeah, you do have an outfit that has just, is just one whole outfit. But, you know, sometimes there is, sometimes you do run into a situation where, yeah, you got, oh, you know what, this raider, I like the boots this guy's got. So you throw them on, and, you know, but you picked up your pants in Vegas and your shirt in Boston. You know, that I think would be a really good thing. Just to be able to be like, hey, we're, like, you know, we're putting our foot down, we're, like, being serious about, like, QA and, like, dedicating the resources to all this. And also, there's an element of, like, okay, so how do you make a system like that balance, where potentially, like, you can throw a jacket over top a shirt, and you can have both of those armored? And, like, they're, you know, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do that. Also, didn't I completely skipped that. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, and I am going to continue to ramble. They could definitely do, you know, something. Or like, oh hey, if you have a bazillion armor things equipped, you know, maybe up to a point it stacks, and then... So, like, you can only have a maximum damage resistance of, like, 50. Or, you know, damage threshold of 50 or something. You know, if you have a combined one of, like... If it's combined for resource luxury textile. Okay. Cool. Yeah. If you have a combined, you know, damage threshold of like 60, and then, you know, it's just a maximum of, it just caps you at 50 or something like that. You could do something like that. Or just like, hey, if, you know, whichever one is higher, if you have a shirt that's armored and a jacket that's armored, then whichever is, the higher, number it's gonna get, you know, we're just gonna use that, we're not gonna use both, type of thing. Yeah. And, also item degradation and, like, durability, I think would be a great thing. Especially in Fallout, where, like, yeah, maybe pipe weapons are just, you know, much less durable than pre-war stuff. And maybe, even if it's, like, relegated to expansions, like, or just mods. Like, yeah, I mean, what if... Like, there could be a company, you could find somebody who's got, let's say, a weapon that's like the, that's like a Saturday Night Special type deal. Real cheap, just real cheap, it populates a lot of the, you know, it populates a lot of the, raider and skeleton loot, just to, like, sort of pad it out so it's, like, a really common thing to find. But also, like, if it works, like, in the other Fallout, in Fallout New Vegas, where you can use a broken 10mm to repair another 10mm or whatever, you know, then obviously that's kind of to its benefit. Same thing with pipe weapons, but they're less durable, but they're easier to find. And, you know, there could also be some interesting, unique things about resources used or whatever. Yeah. Was I gonna talk about vehicles? Because, like, the idea of adding vehicles to a first-person Fallout would be kind of a big deal. Yes, I was going to. Thank you for reminding me. But yeah, also this planet actually wasn't that bad. So I don't know what the balance for vehicles would be. Obviously I would want motorcycles, and if you had party members, and I would say, I would hope it'd be cool if there were multiple party members, but also having some, like, oh hey, maybe even if it's just like even if it ends up just being a thing relegated to like survival, you know, being like, oh hey, maybe I have to pay these people, maybe I have to, you know, give them resources so they don't die. And, you know, if if I don't do that, then they will either die or leave. But yeah. Sorry. So yeah, like, potentially, though, having multiple motorcycles, of course, having to actually maintain multiple motorcycles, and, of course, like, if you have a companion and you don't have enough seats for them, and they get left behind, then they're just gone. It's like, hey, I'll meet you back here at a settlement or an outpost or wherever you found me. You know, whatever. Type of deal. Of course there would be cars. I think also airships. Definitely, like... And I think, like, the rule of thumb should be that there needs to at least be a civilian motorcycle, a military motorcycle, or like a civilian version, a military version, and a raider version. Maybe like a high-tech, I don't want to say enclave, but like, you know, a high-tech version of something. And I don't think there necessarily needs to be like... They don't need to make like, oh, there's a Chrysler comparison, there's a Ford, there's a Chevy, there's a Toyota, there's a Honda, there's a Kia, there's a Nissan, Hyundai, and all that. And yeah, I mean, there doesn't need to be all of that. They've got enough cars that theoretically they could just add the cars in, especially like if they added some classic ones or some classic models, just updated visually. Oh, and also like just reuse the assets from Fallout 4 and 76. Just don't reinvent the wheel. Just bring them up to modern graphical standards, tweak them where needed for them to work, but, you know. But in general, yeah, like a raider version, a civilian version, and a military version, maybe a high-tech version of, whatever. Car, motorcycle, airship, helicopter. And I do think, like, genuinely, having a... Yeah, hey, here's a motorcycle that is just good for getting one person around, carrying maybe a little bit of stuff. Here's like a car that can carry more stuff, but is more stuff, more people, but it does require more fuel. A truck that has way more cargo, maybe 2 people. There's the picker-up truck that's a single-seater for some dumb reason. And of course, like, you know, also, you know, there's also like the sports cars and the other things that are like, they can have other, obviously there should be driving characteristics, there should be some vehicle combat or an understanding of like, I don't think like vehicle combat necessarily, but like, hey, yeah, there are going to be some raiders that have vehicles. It shouldn't be common, because it's never been common for vehicles to be really, like, running and functioning a huge amount, right? So, like, you know, like, 1 in 10 raider groups might have a truck. Yeah, like, if there's raiders with a helicopter, like a vertibird equivalent, the vertibird, of course, being like the military, you know, version of it, right? You can have a civilian version that doesn't have a gun. Maybe you can upgrade it with a gun, but you're never going to find the civilian helicopter with a machine gun on the side, right? Unless it's, like, being used by raiders or a faction. The Raider version would just be like, you know, some fans strapped to a box. Or, I'm sorry, some fans strapped to a, like a micro fusion reactor and a seat. And maybe it has a bunch of other seats, so it can be a little bit of a dropship or something. I wouldn't say no to like a literal dumpster that's like two dumpsters that have been welded together that it's just been welded together with some fans and some kind of a reactor, you know, something like that. And airships. I do think airships would be good. I would love to see, like, hey, we got the Brotherhood, of course, with the Pridwin, but then we also have, like, a Raider faction that has an airship, and then, like, probably, you know, like oh, hey, here's an airship that, or here's, like, there is a ship, and it, was being worked on by somebody, and you, the player, can go and finish that work. Maybe conversing with this person, maybe, you know, just like they died, and you're finishing it for them. You're finishing it because it's cool. And, you know, like some sort of thing, because I really do like the way that the airship works in the Fallout 4 mod I have, where, I mean, you can move it across the Commonwealth, you can move it to the DLC areas, as long as you've visited them. So, and then you have a vertibird attached to it where, yeah, you can just go and get dropped off, and it makes, you know, it makes travel a lot easier. It'd also be cool to see, you know, like, instead of having the grenades, having like a Pip-Boy radio menu thing. So you could actually converse with your, with some stuff. Potentially just have a conversation with the settlement. What was I gonna say? I'm still getting chased, aren't I? No, I don't think so. Yeah. What else? Oh, well, I think that, yeah, combat, obviously tanks would also have to be a thing. I guess what would be the civilian version of a tank? Huh. Yeah, that's a good question. Because, like, okay. Like, the Raider equivalent would be taking, like, an old, backhoe or tractor. I don't know the technical term for some of those heavy equipment things. Like a bulldozer. Taking a bulldozer, welding a bunch of things, killdozer style, adding a big gun. I mean, that would also kind of imply that maybe there needs to be like a scrap version. Like, oh yeah, what if it was like... Yeah, what if there was like a pipe machine gun or a pipe Gatling, or a pipe cannon? I think probably they wouldn't. I think Raiders wouldn't go for a cannon. I think it would probably just be like, you know, you have like the IFV, that's like, you know, it carries a lot of troops, and it has like some anti-personnel support or capabilities, but then you have the tank that has the cannon and a machine gun, but like it has the cannon that is anti-vehicle, anti-material, and all that jazz. And I don't think Raiders would go. Raiders wouldn't have enough of a need for that. Although now that I say it, it would be good to have that as an option. And of course, like, I guess there can be a civilian version of that. A civilian version that exists very uniquely between the Raider version and not. Although maybe the civilian version is a Killdozer modification, and the Raider version is made completely from scrap. Which honestly would be more impressive, and honestly, I actually am kind of okay with that. The mindset of the Raider. Hey, I'm going to go and, put together this, I'm gonna, do the individual welds on this tank. Instead of, like, being a contributing member to a community, I'm just gonna build a fucking tank and shoot everything. Yeah, that sounds like typical Raider behavior. And then, like, the airship, I like the idea potentially. So also, I kind of want an optional doomsday clock, where it's like, your first time playing, you just go through normal and you just experience the game, and then on repeat playthroughs, you have a doomsday clock where, like, in 500 days, or in 100 days from the start of the game, this event is going to happen. This event is going to happen because, whatever. In the style of, oh hey, the super mutant army is invading Necropolis. The water ship, Vault 13 runs out of water at this date. If you wait too long, then the super mutants find Vault 13 and kill everybody. That kind of a thing. Not if you wait, 13 years in-game, then the game just ends, because that was silly. But, stuff like that. Just as, a survival, an optional difficulty slider thing. A slider of on or off, sure, but, I guess it could be, turn it off, have it be, a fast, medium, or slow setting, so, these events will happen, but they'll, take an extended or shorter amount of time between happening. And, otherwise, it would just be, story beats where, oh, hey, when you... if I waited 50 days in Fallout 4, the Brotherhood will just show up. It doesn't matter where I'm at in the story, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, just, 50 in-game days, pass, and then the Brotherhood shows up. As opposed to having to go and do that one part of the main quest, And I don't know, it probably does exclude a few, scenarios from being written, technically. I'm sure, there are some situations where, that just... It's a limitation you have to work around, in order for it to work as both a game that does have a doomsday clock and not having a doomsday clock. Yeah. And I guess I should say my, crazy idea is that, there's... In the spirit of having the slanter, there's also, I don't know, this is a crazy idea, but there's a mutant, and, there are these mutants that are kobolds. there's like, I don't know, a crazy scientist, maybe they turn themselves into one, maybe they turn themselves into this, maybe they turn somebody else, but there is literally around this area, there's Tiamat. There's literally a mutant in the same vein as Harold or the Master, who is, they are a mutant, not a ghoul, not a super mutant. They're a unique kind of mutant that is a whole goddamn fucking multi-headed dragon that is super powerful and has a bunch of mutant worshippers that are mutated in a similar way but not the same way. You know, they're this whole like explicitly evil army. There is no good in them. I mean, you know, potentially in the same vein as the super mutants, like you have, you know, kobolds, for lack of a better term, that are, that exist and are good and will not kill, but it's like the kobolds, Tiamat's kobold army, you know, is on the loose and, you know, are doing things. I just like the thought, and also potentially having like an entire faction that's like based off of like Arthurian knights, maybe who have like a little bit more depth to them than the Minutemen, who like they exist, they go around this area and they try and like save stuff, and they have a little bit of a knight aesthetic. Of course, that's probably the most, like, if I was seriously giving this idea to Bethesda, I would probably be like, yeah, that I'm okay if that changes, because you have the Brotherhood of Steel, of course. But, yeah. Oh? Hello? So I think the things that I'm looking for are just not spawning? Or not spawning correctly? Well, if that's the case, that's gonna be fun. What was I gonna say? That's probably the idea that I do, like, the whole Tiamat's army, Tiamat's army and fighting and having like a Arthurian knight, regulators, vigilante group, Minuteman group, and of course it would be like, oh, you have like the Brotherhood, the local chapter of the Brotherhood, and this faction, you have to like, ideally it would be a matter of like, your goal is not necessarily to save the wasteland, you're like, the main objective of the game is to survive, and that's like, that's the theme and that's the vibe. That's what I would want. And like, so you have to balance, you know, finding resources with building a base and defending that base, building up the resources, building up the means to survive, while defending those means to survive at the same time. And at some point, like, if you're just like, okay, I just want to make my little, I just want to make my little ranch, my little cottagecore ranch. I want to find, you know, like, I also love the idea of potentially, like, procedurally generated, like, companions, maybe. They're like, oh, hey, Also, you know, honestly, I think, like, I've been rambling on and maybe slowing down this video a little bit. But honestly, you know, it wasn't too bad. And in the same way that, like, Starfield does, not procedural companions, but, like, the crewmates that are, like, you know, they exist. They have lines of dialogue. Be cool to just be able to be like, hey, I found this character, they look cool. They look cool, I'll have them as companion. Or, like, you know, I'll get some speech checks, I'll, do whatever. And, they'll be my companion, they'll be my partner, they'll be my spouse. We'll go retreat to, we'll go retreat to our little farm, and we'll defend it against Tiamat's Kobold army. And, but of course, like, you know, if you do that, you could either do that and have an entire army to fight and probably die over and over again, run away, and just try and run away from them over and over again. Or, you know, you can build some relationships with factions. You can, like, when they get attacked, you can go and help them, or not, and then they eventually get, like, pushed out of the area, and just have this, like, maybe in the style of the sadistic game director from, or sadistic game master from Project Zomboid. Just, hey, yeah, what if this town got invaded? And if this town gets invaded, then it's going to be in control of raiders, mutants, whatever. You know, that kind of a thing. Yeah, so that's definitely a thing that they could do. And, like, I don't know, any one of these, like, adding vehicles, adding, you know, sadistic game master, that handles, like, oh, this settlement gets raided. Also, like, crafting your own faction, I think, potentially crafting your own faction where you can just be like, hey, yeah, maybe I want to work for the Brotherhood of Steel, but I have my own faction, and I'm, like, building them up. And they can be allied with the Brotherhood of Steel, it's fine, it's just, like, you know. And, of course, maybe even potential, like, oh, hey, maybe I work with the Brotherhood of Steel, and I split off and make my own faction. And then potentially that faction, you know, they probably wouldn't make it a systemic thing, where it's like, oh, hey, I can have, like, 15 different splinter groups of factions. But it would be funny to see that. It would be real funny to see that. But I do want it to be, like, harsh. Not like, oh, you know what? Not like Kenshi hard. Or harsh. But, like, you know, something that does feel like you are surviving a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and all that good stuff. Cybernetics. Like, they showed cybernetics a few times in the TV show for Fallout, so I think, yeah, having, like, a voice modulator that can affect your charisma and potentially give you, you know, potentially, well, they probably shouldn't do player character voice acting, but, you know, potentially could, like, if you give a cybernetic implant to somebody else, then it changes their voice or whatever. You know, like, I don't want anything, like, super, super crazy, but just, like, a robot arm, robot legs, a few different robot legs and arms, and, like, maybe a few, like, full body conversion type things. Just, you know, nothing super insane. Things that are at the very least still human. Like, digigrade legs? I would love that. Having tails? Probably not. It probably wouldn't be impossible, but it would probably just be a bit extra. Yeah. So, I'm trying to think what else. Also way more weapons. I mean, like, mods exist, but, you know, having a few different options. The way that Fallout New Vegas did weapons, and the meta that New Vegas had, I think is great, honestly. Having, like, hey, you have a 5.56... There's 5.56, and, like, what does 5.56 mean in a repeater rifle, right? You got your bolt-action varmint rifle, but you also have your service rifle, and then you also have, you know, your light machine gun, which all are 5.56, and all sort of, like, you know, you can see a progression there from going from the varmint rifle to the service rifle to the light machine gun, in a sort of, like, I guess that's really, like, horizontal progression. Actually, yeah, that is horizontal progression, where you're going from one type of weapon to another type, versus, like, varmint rifle, where you're going, like, varmint rifle, hunting rifle, anti-material rifle, where you're going bolt-action rifle to bolt-action rifle, but you're just upping the caliber. You're just, you know, evolving to the next damage threshold. And then, you know, also same thing for all the other things with, like, 9mm, 10mm, like 9mm, 10mm, 12.7, 357, 44 to 4570, and all that jazz. And of course, I mean, I think they have a few oddballs probably in that whole list, right? But, like, yeah. That sort of a system. You know, like, mods can exist for, like, let's say having the, you know, having the, like, the service rifle and the Chinese rifle, or the Chinese assault rifle. But at the same time, you can also, the Chinese assault rifle in 5.56 and the service rifle can also coexist, just having different stats, and, you know, potentially with the whole weapon mod system, you could push the service rifle into being more like the Chinese assault rifle, or vice versa, or you can push them further away from each other. But I think, like, the more that Bethesda can do, the more that the developer does, the better defined it is for modders, so that you look at it and you can be like, hey, so when I make my mod and I put the damage number in here, should I have a 20 or a 40? You know, or whatever. So, yeah. I might play Fallout 4 after this, and have a fun time thinking about things. Anyways, till next time, have a good day, great day even. Chowskis.